I thought about it for a minute. Welcome, everybody. We are on Grade Logic episode 8. I am here with Ryan Sear, and today we are talking, it's just the two of us. So we wanted to discuss something fun in this month of October, full of fights, maybe. We are talking about fear today. We kind of talked about aliens last week. I had some trouble traveling to Idaho on the road, lost service, and definitely missed out on the rest of that conversation.
We had
Um,
alien interference.
Exactly. That's what happened. I was in the field researching. They stole everything I had. And this week we want to talk about fear. And there's a lot of different things that we can talk about with this, and especially as coaches, this is something that we both work with a lot. You know, people who want to grow and change their lives and do things that are different and better for them. And whenever you're growing, whenever you're doing something different, you always encounter fear. Always, always. So, before we jump into anything from that perspective, I would love to just open this up from the more of like the primal instinct of fear and your own personal experience. So, Ryan, I'm going to ask you, when you were young, what were you most afraid of?
When I was young, what was I most afraid of? Oh man, that's a tough question. Because I think I'd like to think that like as a like what we think of like normal things to be scared of. Like as a kid, I was pretty fearless. Like I was that kid that was out on the playground and where you're supposed to be swinging on the swings. I'm like climbing the side of it and like trying to like be adventurous and do all that kind of stuff. And then like even I think like challenging myself, I would do that. So the best way I can answer that, I would say is um like making friends in a way
Mm,
and like being vulnerable and oh, this was another one. I really feared being like seen as someone who was wrong or 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 unintelligent. And
when you
so
were
and
young?
so what that kept me from doing is speaking up a lot. Like there was
Ah,
very often in math class, I like to speak up because I was good at math and I knew the answer. Like I could calculate the answer and I knew that. Even like when rare occasion you're wrong, like that happened too. But most of the time I felt comfortable that I could say an answer. But then things where there was a lot of opinion, like English or history class, I like was so frightened to like speak up. Like I'd be sitting there like hiding, like not trying to get called on. And my heart would be pounding and yeah, like almost like I'm standing on top of like a cliff and I'm just
mm,
sitting in class.
hmm.
So yeah, there's
Wow.
yeah,
Okay,
social
so
interaction stuff like that.
gotcha. Okay. Well, yours was I mean, that was very grounded answers. Feels like, I mean, I'm gonna say normal, but probably most fears are. Um, so you didn't have like a fear of monsters under your bed or like ghosts in the attic, or did you have a basement? Because those are always terrifying.
Not to the point where it was like a phobia, like not where it was like always a problem. Like I mean, even now, like if I walk outside and it's dark out, I'm kind of like a little on edge, like
Yeah.
just for like animals and stuff, but not to the point where it was like a phobia. I got nothing that I would really point to.
Huh. Wow. Well, okay. You're braver than me. I actually thought that there was a vampire behind my door, like anytime I went to bed. And so I would cry until my mom came. The bathroom was the next door over. But if it was the middle of the night, I did not want to leave my bed because I thought the vampire was going to get me at that very opportune moment. And so I cried until my mom came. And and I thought, of course, there was something in my closet and under my bed. I was afraid of spiders. I was afraid of my basement. Basements are creepy though, so plus I feel like movies tell you to be afraid of them.
hmm
Um,
So
yes.
that's interesting. I have questions. Were you afraid of so spiders? Would you be like
Mm.
like afraid of a spider only when like that fear was only provoked in you when you saw a spider, or was it
No,
kind of like a
you're
vampire
talking
thing where
about
you're
it.
like you think there's spiders all over the place and you're constantly afraid of them?
As you can see, I still am not a fan.
Yeah.
Although living in Texas, I have a new worst enemy, which is cockroaches. Spiders, I appreciate,
Hmm.
and they still terrify me. We went to Peru last year, actually, and we slept in domes along our track. And there was a jungle dome that we stayed in, and everyone was like, "Oh, so funny! Look, Julie, there's a big spider outside your tent." And I'm like, "Oh my god,
Not
that's
funny.
not funny at all." And then we went to dinner. We came back, and we got into our cut, and Travis was like, "Give me my boot." And I said, "Why?" He's like, "Just give it to me." And I was like, "I know what you're doing." And I looked over, and he's like, "Don't look." There was a spider somewhere around the realm of the size of a part of my hand. It was massive. So I slept with my headlamp on that night because I was like, I just need to know that I can see it if it wants to kill me.
Hmm.
Okay,
Well, now
so
that you mentioned that, I feel like I am like overly cautious and like fearful of like wasps because I
mm,
got stung when I was a kid and it was not a pleasant experience. And so, yeah,
that
if I
seems
see those,
rational.
like I steer like way clear. But I don't know. To me, it just feels. Yeah, I guess it's like a normal fear. Um, but like there's like wasps like that are constantly, even when we clean them up outside my front door. I kind of I stopped cleaning it up and they keep like putting their nest back in there. But as long as I don't do anything, but to like try and stay calm, they leave me alone. So it's almost like I get a little dose of trying to face some of my fear every time I go out the front door.
Yeah, yeah, that's funny. Um,
Don't we all, right?
Yeah, yeah, we do.
Into
That's
this crazy
true.
world.
I have always had a weird fascination with like things that are scary. Um,
Mhm.
I was and still like I'm always the one that like wants to hear people's ghost stories and it'll freak me out. And I love telling them too. Like I've had experiences in my own house and and still again like I will be sweating and terrified and I will be like up at night and if I hear one creak I'm gonna be like praying my life away. They're like, oh my god, what did I summon? And that struck me, it's just as we're prepping this week, I thought, well, that's just such an interesting trait to have is like kind of like invoking it or inviting it and like wanting to engage with fear,
Mhm.
and I'm just so curious about that. Is that something that you have too?
Curious about engaging with fear.
Yeah, or do you feel like you invite it into your life?
Not always, but when when I like to challenge myself and do so because I know that when I do lean into fear, there's something else that I gain on the other side of it. And that like that so for example, starting this show.
Mhm.
Starting this show, that it was a really exciting idea that we came up with. But there's some fear of like putting ourselves out there onto the internet and talking and recording myself and um, the thoughts of what are people going to think and can we do this? Can we run a show? And I don't know. I guess we're still finding out. But so so there's those fears, right? But just by leaning into it and going for it, we find out that hey, we can hold a conversation and we can have a little bit of fun and we're enjoying this too. So um and then over time, I think that one of my other fears of public speaking is something that I can get better at, and then I gain something. I gain a skill by facing like that actual fear.
Yeah.
um Obstacle course races is a hobby of mine, and fear not doing well, fear being judged out there, not completing an obstacle, and but every time I go out there and I complete an obstacle, I'm proving it to myself that I can go out there and I can do something, and I'm gaining like confidence, I'm gaining abilities. So there's always something I think that is gained when we can identify a fear and lean into it.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, that's a very adult perspective too, and I think that applies. Like, I'm like, it doesn't apply for me in ghosts, I don't think. And by the way, my mom, she squeaked in here with me. My mom knows all about. There
Hi,
she is.
Mom.
He said, "Hi, mom." That's my friend Ryan. Hi, Ryan. She knows all about my fascination with telling ghost stories, because I would. Can you hear that sigh? Because I would always tell her. I was like, "Mom, I swear there's something," and she was like, "Oh, Julie."
I said, what ghost in his right mind would come into our house?
But
Because it's a crazy place.
Yeah, yeah. You think ghosts are scary.
Right. Right, exactly. He said, "You think ghosts are scary." But no, I think that what you said though is it's really true, and I think that we can see that, and that's something that we work with a lot with, with ourselves, with our own growth and development all the time, and then helping other people with it as well. Um, so I think from that perspective, as far as the ghosts go, I feel like mine's not as relevant. I want to leave that more for like next week when we talk
Yeah.
about more of the spiritual stuff. But I want you to talk a little bit more about you mentioned the top 10 fears before we got onto this call. So tell us a little bit more about those.
Well, I want to see if you can guess them still. Like you cut me off earlier. So I did pull up a list. It's a Washington Post, and it looks like they did some sort of poll here for Americans. What the biggest fears are. So what do you think? Let's try. Let's see if you can guess 3 out of the top 5.
I feel the top ones, I feel like I can get them, but is it the top ones? Let me just start shooting, okay? So I'm gonna say fear of failure.
Not on the list.
Americans, you lie. Fear of death.
Fear of death it's got to be on here. Where is it? Oh, there's a specific type of death. There's drowning.
Oh, so I have to be very specific?
There's not death, and yeah, I guess death is not on the list. Drowning is. So specifically drowning. Fair. We'll give you that one. That's right. Number 4. Number 4.
Is being buried alive one of them?
No, I'll save you from that. The only form of death that's on the list is drowning.
Is drowning. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, if you're watching and you have suggestions on the top 10 fears per the Washington Post poll, please feel free to suggest. Okay, so other fears, I would say fear of hold on. So we're talking phobias in general.
There's a whole bunch.
Arachnophobia. Does arachnophobia count?
Bugs, snakes, and other animals. Number 3 on the list.
Nice. Okay, what about claustrophobia?
So you got 2. Yes, claustrophobia you got, but that is number 6. So you got to keep going.
Okay. Fear of being alone.
Oh, that's such a good one, but it's not on the list because people won't admit that one.
I know,
that's such a good one, though.
These are too coachy. Okay, so things that people are afraid of. Losing a loved one.
No.
Okay, people are claiming to be afraid of. Goodness, you guys.
You need one more.
Ghosts.
Yes, ghosts are on the list. The ghost is number 10.
Okay. Oh gosh. Wow. Okay. Snake. Oh, you already said bugs and all.
Yeah, bugs, snakes, and other animals. So you got of the top 3 or
clowns.
The top 5. What is it?
Clowns.
Clowns is on the list as well. That's number 9. You still haven't hit 3 of the top 5.
Okay, come on. I'm gonna get there. Hold on, I'm warming up.
Okay.
Fear. Okay, other top 10.
You got drowning, and then bugs, snakes, and other animals.
Okay, what else are you guys afraid of? Slash all of us. Vampires is not going to be on the list. I'm sure zombies are not going to be on the list. Fear of I don't know, like, does a pandemic count? Are people afraid of that?
No.
Warfare.
No. Think simpler. Like just like places we might be and things we might do.
Car accidents?
No.
The basement?
Darkness is one.
Okay,
Darkness is number 8.
which I believe is called nyctophobia, fear of the dark.
Oh, okay. The technical term.
Yes. Okay, so darkness is on the list. Um, fear of a place. There's more places on the list.
Yeah, there's some like some things that might happen at certain places or things that you have to do that people are uncomfortable doing.
You get stood up on a date.
No.
Fear of. Come on, you guys. I need a lot of help here.
Somebody
Things-
bail her out.
I'm like thinking of different seasons, avalanches, fires, things that people might be afraid of happening at
I
places.
think you've gotten half the list here though.
Are they like fairly obvious?
The top 5. You're gonna be like, wow, I could have gotten those.
Oh, so irritating. Come on. I'm like, okay, fear of um zombies. I already said was not.
Wow, so zombies is on the list, and I'm like shocked that zombies is on the list.
Come on, you're not afraid of dying alone, but you're afraid of zombies.
I am stoked for zombies. I can't wait for the coronavirus zombie apocalypse.
You heard it here first. We'll have a prep episode. Okay. So I got most of them.
You got most of them. All right. So I think I'll catch you up here on the top ones here. And I think there's some discussion worth about them too. So in reverse order, number 5 on the list is blood and needles.
Okay, yeah. People are afraid of that.
Yep, getting shots. You got drowning as number 4. You got bugs, snakes, and other animals at number 3.
Uh-huh.
Number 2 is heights. People are afraid of heights.
Okay, I didn't think about that.
And number 1 is public speaking.
Oh, you already said that. Darn. Okay.
Number 1 is public speaking. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, well, if everyone watching just schooled me on that, then I totally understand. Those were definitely obvious. Okay.
So which one of those, and then let's see if you missed any other ones. You got claustrophobia. Oh, another one that we didn't mention. That's a good one. This is number 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is flying. Fear of flying.
Yeah.
And then the next one after that, 8 is strangers.
Okay.
So
that seems actually very relevant today. I think everyone's afraid of each other.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I'm gonna skip over zombies. I could spend probably a whole
another episode
on zombies. But the one that I knew public speaking, I've heard that one before because I've had classes on public speaking, communication, and in the consulting work that I did, we talked to people about the fear of public speaking, how large it is, and that everybody really relates to it. So I already knew that one, and it's so interesting. What I've realized for myself with public speaking, like identified why it is that it's so fearful for me or frightening for me, is that when I'm one-on-one, I can in a conversation, I feel that I can adjust my demeanor, I can change my tone, and I can watch your face and read your reactions, and there's feedback going back and forth the whole time.
Yeah.
And so it's all rooted from a wanting to be liked. Like I want you to like me in this conversation. I want to make a friend. And if I'm public speaking in front of a group of people, there's 10 times, 20 times, however many people are out in the stands, the audience, that many more people and opinions that I have to sway or feel like I have to read. And so I'm constantly looking around and doing all this stuff. And, I was a pretty horrible public speaker and presentation giver, for a while, and I still struggle with it. But like I've learned a lot from taking courses, and it helped a lot. But just understanding that fear alone is has been really huge for me because um I've been able to work with that, like the root of it, which is, just starting to tell myself like I actually am not up on a stage or a podium to have 100% of the audience agree with everything I say, but rather, I go up with the thought now, hopefully I just have one person agree with one thing that I say if I speak
Mm,
for an hour.
mhm.
And then I'm like, okay, that was great. That's a success. And I don't have to control all those opinions, and I really just go up and say what I have to say. And so
Yeah,
that I think has helped me a lot with understanding that fear,
yeah,
and just redirecting it a little bit.
yeah. I like that. I like that analysis, understanding the one-on-one versus the group. Um, can I ask you a real question?
Yeah, ask away.
Yeah, do it. Okay, so what scares you the most right now?
At this very moment, or like nowadays?
Yeah, in this moment or in this day.
um What scares me the most, wow, probably not being able to cut it as a coach and be
Mm,
able to build a successful coaching practice, because that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do more of it. And in order to do more of it, I need to make a living out of it. And in order to make a living out of it, I need to be good. I need to be able to provide value and help people in a
right,
valuable way.
right.
So the fear that that may not happen, and the ego hits that I would take with it too, like not being able to cut it and do something that like I try to set my mind to. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a fear for sure right now that I have right now that I'm most most scared of.
And do you feel like there's a fear under that?
Do I feel like there's a fear under that? I almost, yeah, you know what? I'll say that it's like it'd be a fear of failure, or but either there's even one underneath that too. It's
Right.
like a fear of inadequacy, that I'm not good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I think that is probably the thing. And the reason I was hesitant to say that is because um I know what that like would look like, right? Like I've tried things in the past and have not been good enough and have moved on from those things. Maybe I could have tried more, maybe I could have tried harder, but I have felt that way at times. And with certain things that I did feel that way, I have tried harder, and I've like challenged myself to go and work towards it. Or just like even if shift, even if I don't like, if I end up like not being a coach, it would hurt. It would hurt a little
Hmm.
bit. Um, but eventually I would pick myself up and I would move on. I have just a history and a habit of doing that. So that's why I was like, I'm not even going to mention it, but it still would be there. The fear is still there for sure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Whenever I've worked with people through fear, I really like having a whiteboard with me because I think that there are layers to it. People often come and they think that they present, there's a surface level fear of, oh, I'm afraid to leave this relationship. And I feel like when you can get to the root, well, if you leave this relationship, then what? And then there's like, oh, well, if I leave this relationship, then I'm going to have to start over on my own again and I'm going to have to be in my own place. Okay. And then what? Well, then might be by myself for a little while. It might take some time for me to, meet somebody new. Or what if I don't make somebody new? I'm afraid that, somebody else won't love me the way that this person loves me. Okay. And then if that's true, then what? Um, and I like kind of continuing to break it down to help people to embody that each stage of the fear, because I think it helps you to just like process it more and then also get to the root of it. And I feel like the root of it often is that we're like afraid to die alone under a bridge, or we're afraid to just like have everything fall completely apart. And so
Mhm.
this like surface level fear, you can hear my family
I hear the
juggling
circus.
around. That's the circus. Um, there's always a surface level fear, but once we get to the root of it, it feels like it's often always the same. Like I feel like at the end of the day, it's just like we want to be loved. and we want to be accepted, and we want to have a space to belong and not die alone under a bridge.
So what's the, maybe there's not a cookie cutter answer here, but what would be the next step after? Because I agree with you. I think identifying the fear is very useful. What in your experience and your opinion is the next step after identifying the fear? Getting to the root of it
Well,
and identifying it.
I kind of call it playing truth or fear, because we accept fears as truth, and they're usually not, right? So there's fears like, if I walk into a fire, I will die. Yes, true. But if I be in front of, okay, well, I'm going to personal examples. So I think I've shared this probably before, but I had a fear of, I had to do, it was my first event, and I was speaking in front of people as well. And I was like terrified. And the whole week before, I was prepping for it. And I was sitting on my couch eating frosting at one point. Like, that's when I noticed. I'm like, oh my God, where are you? Like, what are you doing? And I realized at that point that, okay, I'm terrified that, one, nobody's going to show up. And then I'm also terrified at the same time that all of these people are going to show up, and that I'm going to have to, impress them or something. And that I'm going to forget what I, have to say, or that they're not going to be moved by what I have to say, that I'm not going to make an impact, or that I want it to do with the impact, right? I was like afraid of all these things at the same time. And so I stopped and I looked at it and I said, okay, what really, really, truly matters, and what's true here? And I said, if I speak in front of people and they come or they don't, am I going to lose the roof over my head? No. Am I going to lose my, at the time, boyfriend? No. Are my dogs going to die because I speak in front of people? No. Am I going to lose my family? No. Am I going to lose my job? No. And so I had to start looking at like the check marks of what's really true here. Is there an actual reason to be like physically scared of doing this? No. And so I was able to relax into that, lean into it, like you said, and say, okay, well, this is just an opportunity. It's a growing experience. And I was still nervous doing it, but I was in a much better headspace. I wasn't attached to any outcome, because I knew that regardless of what happened, I was going to be safe through it. I was going to live through it, and I was going to learn through it. So that's what I would say. Look at what's really true in the situation.
Truth
Am
or
I frozen?
Fear? Truth or fear?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
I don't know if you can hear me. I know my connection is kind of bad.
You're okay. Yeah, I could hear you.
Okay.
But that's, I'm trying to relate that to the way that like I've dissected fear as well. And there's two ways that I do it. That I also do it. You kind of touched on it, which is just like asking like the questions that start to dissect it and say, is this fear, for lack of a better word right now, is it real? Because fear serves a purpose for us as human beings. There's, when we're in danger or we sense that we're in danger, then we feel fear and we either kick into flight or fight, right? So if I'm standing over the edge of a cliff and I look down, I like, there's that feeling, right? Like that, whoa, my life is in danger right now. Maybe I should back away from the edge. And that might be a real and good serving fear right now. If I didn't have that, I might be like, you know what? I'm jumping. Let's just do it. That looks cool. And not make it out. So, and then there's fears like, maybe just like financial fear that's important. Like I need to like have enough money to keep a roof over my head and food on the table. And that keeps me safe. Like, so any of those fears that like physically keeps us safe, I think are real fears. And then there's exaggerated ones, like we touched on a little bit, like phobias that are maybe no longer serving that purpose and are a little exaggerated. So those are real fears. And then the ones that feel real, but like you said, like maybe might not be the truth, are ones that are generated by our ego, that are protecting what our ego thinks. you know,
Have to look at that.
what for me, speaking up in front of people, what will people think if I say this?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
what if I fail? What if I lose a race? Like none of those things are really putting me in danger at all. You know, even just signing up for some of my first races was scary. Like I didn't even want to click the button to sign up for a race, and I'm just like, because I'm scared, and it's not real. It's not putting me in any danger whatsoever. All that way I was thinking was, can I do that? Can I actually do it? And and so those fears were not really, you know, so they're not self-serving. I'm going to replace it with
Mm.
not real with not self-serving, because the reality is for me that those things, those fears are always still there. Even though I explore all those questions that you mentioned, the fear is still there. I just have to
Yeah.
work through it. I go with it. I lean into the fear. That's what I
Yeah.
found. And but understanding that, like, well, you know what? It's just my ego, and it's not really like putting me in any danger. And really, in reality, there's probably more to gain than there is to lose.
Yep.
Helps me to figure out what that how I'm holding myself back because of these fabricated fears.
Yeah. 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 You had a couple of things come up for me as you were sharing that. I've worked with some people, you know, it's not uncommon for somebody to come to the table and say, you know, have this mindset of like, I have to get rid of my fear. I have to figure out how to have my life without fear. And I think, you know, it's a really wonderful thing that I've learned that has given me a lot of relief is you don't actually have to get rid of your fear. And that Elizabeth Gilbert actually talks about this in her book, Big Magic. She talks about kind of like accepting fear as part of the journey. She personifies it like putting fear in the passenger seat or in the back seat, but not letting it drive the car. And that has changed so much for me. And it's helped me, you know, help other people see that fear is just always going to be part of the equation. You don't have to learn how to be without it. You have to have a better relationship with it to know that it's not going to overcome you, it's not going to overtake you. It doesn't have to, rather. It's possible to be afraid and to still do the things that you want to do. And I think that's a really amazing perspective and perspective change. It just brings so much more relief than this angst of like, oh God, I'm afraid and I have to be this person who's not. No, you don't. Everybody has fear and it's a good thing. We need to have fear. We're wired for it. And it's protecting us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing that came to mind, um, about all these thoughts, right? Like all these thoughts are what a lot of the fears that we're talking about now, and they're all like, again, just exploring, like, are they real or not? They're all future based, right? Or
Mm.
past, or from the past. It's a trauma that occurred in the past, and it's during that same, like, oh, I'm in a similar situation than I was in the past. I got stung by a wasp in the past, and now there's a wasp, therefore I'm going to get stung and I'm scared. As a metaphor too, like
Right.
for all kinds of situations. I was in a relationship in the past and I got burned. That my trust was broken. And so now I'm in a relationship now and I have fear because I'm in that same situation again. And so is
Mm.
that real? You know, is it's not exactly the same situation, and it probably does serve maybe a bit of a purpose. Um, but we also have to learn how to get past those traumas. So that's the past part of it. And then the future is, we're always trying to project some sort of outcome that's going to happen when we usually have very little control, and we had a free will versus destiny, right? Very little control over what actually happens in the future. We just have little bits of input and actions that we take, but our mind, we can get stuck just turning the wheels, thinking about all the like bad things that we think could happen, when most of those things are probably not. The external outcomes could happen, could not happen. And then the internal stuff that we think like, oh, I think that person's going to think this about me, or I'm going to make a fool of myself. Those are all like my own internal stuff. That's, it might happen, it might not happen. It doesn't matter. Those are things that are trying to protect my ego in the end. So there's also a future past type of thing where, so knowing that, I think just coming back to, all right, well, if I don't think about the future and I don't think about the past and I just do what's right here in front of me, if I'm supposed to do a presentation, I just do the presentation, don't think about anything else, then that helps alleviate the fears that can come up as well.
Okay,
Does
I
that make
have to
sense?
tell you that it's a little bit glitchy on my side right now.
Yeah. Did you catch the gist of what I said? The future and past? Can you hear me now?
Sorry, I can hear you a little bit now.
I feel like I'm in an AT&T commercial. Can you hear me now?
I know, right? Yeah, it just got choppy for a second.
Okay. So, yeah, did you get the gist of that? The past and future, and just trying to stay present in order to deal with that.
Were you saying that as a question?
Yeah,
It's
I
still
was
coming
trying
through
to
kind of
figure out how
robotic
much
on
you
my
caught.
side.
Anyways, um, it's, I think just staying present was my point, that helps alleviate any fear that's being triggered by the past, or any fear that's being triggered because we're thinking about the future.
I'm gonna try something. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Brief intermission.
Oh. I figured that this way maybe I could hear you better because now I can see you. It's coming through better.
You know what, Julie?
What?
This is very fitting because I was afraid this would happen.
So good, dad jokes.
I love dad jokes. I always do it.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah,
Okay.
my kids are gonna hate me. They're like, "Shut up, Dad."
I like dad jokes too. I'm not gonna lie. I've got some too. But this is good. Now we can pick up. So
Cool.
tell me where you left off.
I, I feel like I've said it 3 times now, but so the gist of what I was saying is that, like, fear, I think, is also triggered either very much by the past, like past events that have happened and that were traumatic to us, and
Right.
and then we end up in a similar situation, so that trauma triggers that fear,
Yeah.
or we're stuck trying to predict the future, and either we have little control over those things, or there's really no way of knowing what the outcome's actually going to be. Then there's also like futuristic, like internal thoughts, like what I think people are going to think about me, and if I'm going to make a fool of myself, so then on my own self-confidence and how I'm going to see myself. But none of those things have actually happened yet. And so the only thing that needs to happen is, basically, in order to have a remedy for fear, is just stay present. If I have a fear of public speaking and I'm thinking about all those things that are going to happen, is the presentation going to be good, or what are people going to think about me? Oh, I've been in a presentation before and I screwed up, so that's past trauma. But if I just stay present and I give the presentation and I'm not over here in the past or in the future, then I'm there should be no fear, really. It's just right here, right now.
So what you're talking about reminds me of something else, of just this idea of of fear kind of creating all of these invisible boundaries around us to protect us, and how our past experiences continue to create more and more boundaries that determine how we feel in our present and about our future. So, can you hear me okay, by the way?
I can hear you. I can't see you though. I don't. So I'm.
Yeah, that's on purpose still,
Okay,
just
that's
because.
fine.
I still, for anybody watching, I am in a cabin in the woods, not in a scary movie at this moment.
Not hiding
But
in my
I
closet.
no, no, I just don't have great signal. So we're doing what we can. But anyhow, so the way that I think about it is, I think about things in my past that, like, when you're born, you're not born with all of this set of fears, like be afraid of clowns and be afraid of riding your bike down the sledding hill, Julie, and be afraid of going out to dinner with a new person. You're not, you like learn all of these different fears. So I think about it, that from my past, I remember when my mom said, don't touch the iron, it's hot. And I was like, is it really? And so I touched the iron and I was like, oh, it's hot. And so I learned that. And from that moment, it created this like mental, I think, like this invisible field for my mind. I think about it like an electric fence, truly. If you've ever had, well, now you do have a dog now, but we used to have an electric fence for my dog, Coco. He always escaped it, but it was like the underground one that was invisible. And so she knew where her boundaries were, allegedly. And when she would get close to it, and then she would know. And then if she went over it, it would give her that shock. So, right, it's meant to keep her inside. And I think that's the same thing about these fears, these fears that we're conditioned to have. So just to take that back, iron moment and the fire moment, right? Like the stove is hot, the fire is hot, the campfire is hot. It creates this like invisible barrier around me where I'm like, okay, now I know, like, fires are hot. I'm closed off there. Fires are hot, irons are hot, don't touch them. And then next I remember riding down the sledding hill on my bike, and I fell forward and hurt myself pretty bad. And I remember that being another moment where it creates this other, like, this new boundary for me in my life, where it's like, okay, don't ride down the sledding hill on a bike. Don't ride down big steep hills on a bike in general. And then I'm trying to think. Oh, I did this other stupid thing on a skateboard one time when I was a kid, and that created another boundary for me. And like you collect all these little boundaries along the way when you learn, oh, that's not safe, or it puts me in harm's way, or emotionally it's damaging. And so an example of that is when I cut off all my hair and I was bullied. I went to school and I was bullied for looking like a boy. And so that created an emotional boundary for me about my fear, where I was like, oh, that's a whole different conversation. But from that, I was like, oh, I can't trust my own opinion because it's not safe. And so with fear, I think that when we grow and when we become aware of all these boundaries of fear, it's our choice and it's our responsibility to look at them and say, well, is this still true? Is it still true for me that fire is hot? Yes. Is it still true for me that I can't trust my own opinion because it's not cool? No. That was something that I had to learn through. And so when it's something that is no longer true, that you have to change, you have to let go of that boundary. And it's kind of like, I tell my clients, it's like going through that invisible fence for a dog. Like, whenever you get near the edge of that boundary, the fear is going to strike. It's going to send a really strong signal, and it's going to say, no, it's not safe. Don't go out there. Don't do this. Don't go beyond this. Remember what happened last time. And it's really going to try to contain you and keep you in that boundary. And it's uncomfortable. And then when you go through it, like, you're free of it. You get beyond the other side, and you say, oh, wow, I'm safe. I made it. I'm through this, and I'm okay after all. So I love to think about it that way, because I kind of think like you can retrain your boundaries, and it's definitely important to.
Yeah, I would just slightly shift that question. I think those examples that you gave were awesome. But that question that you asked, is it still true? I would shift that slightly to, does this still serve me?
Mm.
Does this fear still serve me? Because you're right, like all our fears are learned, and it serves some type of purpose. So um, if I like spoke up in class and I said something silly, and the entire class laughed, like in a demeaning way, and that made me feel small and it was unfavorable, then I ask, if I asked, is this still true? Like, is that fear? Is it still true that I might say something that would embarrass me? The answer could still be yes. Like that could still happen. So that fear then is still justified in that sense. But if I ask, does it serve me? Does it still serve me? Well, if I'm not ready to face what, the advantages and benefits that I get of being able to speak out and participate in a conversation and participate in class and do all that stuff, then if I'm not ready, then yeah, it still serves me. I don't want to speak up. I don't want to be like embarrassed again. That still serves me. But if I'm like, you know what, I want to learn. I want to be comfortable being able to speak out in front of people. So you know what, is that fear? Does that fear still serve me? No, it
Mm.
doesn't. It doesn't serve me anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I want to kind of steer this in a different direction because we're doing something that's the opposite of our show, which is we're agreeing very well. And so I want to introduce one of the polarizing questions that you prepared for this week. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to look at fear and actually I want to make sure that I have your questions in front of me. So we
Yeah.
have already talked about fear and kind of serving a purpose in a roundabout way. Um, but I want to get to the one that says, does fear keep us safe or is it really just holding us back? And I want your thoughts on that immediately. Just kidding.
Yeah. Maybe maybe I didn't think that one out as much because
Ah.
now that we talked about it, we're like, I guess at times it does keep us safe, which can be important, but is it really just holding us back? And I guess I would say if I had to pick one of those, I'd say most of the time it's just holding us back. Like most
Mm,
of the time, the fears that we have are really just protecting our ego and keeping us from learning something, experiencing
mm,
something, gaining something. Um, and so yeah, like that's my short answer. Yeah, yes, fear generally just holds us back from
mm.
from now I have a caveat. So it generally just holds us back from things that we want to accomplish. But another way that I combat fear is I still use fear, and I will fear something else that serves me better. So, for example, I was given an opportunity to go out to Seattle for one of my jobs out of undergrad, and I had never lived anywhere other than Florida, and I was really scared to go do that.
Mm,
Um,
mhm,
but instead of fearing, what that unknown is really what it was, fearing the unknown that was out there, the experiences that I would have to experience all for the first time, the discomfort of being in a new place and new faces, new people, the culture, fearing all that discomfort. I feared what I would miss out on. I was
mm,
like, you know what? I'm afraid that I'll miss out on some awesome opportunity here to see another part of the country that I've never been to.
mm,
I had FOMO. I was fear of missing out. I didn't want to miss out on that experience. So I was still fearful. All that fear was still there. I just redirected it.
hmm.
So that was a long stitch answer too. Yeah, most of the time, fear is just holding us back unless we use it in a way that serves us. Fear something that serves us.
Yeah, yeah. And as you were saying that, it kind of reminded me of the question that we started this week with, offline, which was if you had the
Oh, that was so
opportunity
good.
to get rid of your fear, would you?
Yeah.
To get rid of your sense of fear. Did you
Like,
decide?
like I don't know if you could see me, but I'm like picking at my hair right now because like that is such a tough question. I don't. Do you want me to try and take a stab at it? Or you wanna take a stab at it?
I like I want it. I just automatically just want to say yes,
Right.
and then I don't know. I feel like fear makes life exciting too.
Hmm.
You know, like just it gives you something to grow through and overcome. I mean, okay, let's just look at this, Julie. So if I had no fear and I could go for anything, then would I be in a completely different like place in my life? Probably, yeah, I guess,
Would it be
right?
fun?
Um, would it be fun?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, would it be fulfilling to know that you
Right.
do things without having had to work through, overcome? I don't know. Like, let's think about that. Is it fun and satisfying to achieve something without overcoming
I
fear? Yeah,
I
I guess it
actually
is.
have a good case study example.
All right.
So oh man, I don't know his name exactly. It's like Alex something. The free. Have you seen the movie Free Solo?
Yeah,
Who's the climber in that movie?
I don't remember his name, but I know what you're talking about. And
Alex
actually,
Alex Honnold.
yeah.
Alex Honnold. So Alex Honnold in this movie, there's some spoilers here, maybe a little bit, but in this documentary, he climbs El Capitan, the greatest wall to climb for rock climbers, and he does it without a rope. He free climbs it, and they were talking to him a whole bunch, and he is very apathetic to like everything. Like he doesn't show much emotion, and he's like self-admittedly, he's like, yeah, I don't really feel much emotion. And like he went to the doctors, and I think they did an MRI that there was something like different about his brain, that like the things that fire off emotion are not as like strong with him. And so he kind of explains it, that either he doesn't feel that way because he's climbed so much, but and because he's climbed so much that like he's gotten numb to it, like it's like his tolerance level to that kind of emotion has like increased. And so he needs to be able to climb the bigger and bigger walls to feel something. But
Right.
then they also
Yeah.
pose the question like, well, perhaps it's something that is just actually physiologically different with you, that you don't feel emotion at a high level unless it's very extreme emotion. And I think that's actually probably what the case was with him more, because he was more like that as like a child. They talked about it too, like he was kind of like that, so it wasn't something that happened over time. um, and so for him, the only he rock climbs, and he climbs these crazy, the most challenging walls in the world, because it's the only thing that instills some sense of fear in him, that he's like,
Mm,
so he talks about it being
I see.
so gripped that that's when he actually feels alive.
Ah, well, I feel like you just popped my bubble with a question.
I'm sorry, I jumped in there with it. It clicked for me, and I was like, oh, that's so good.
How dare you? No, no, you're right. No, you're right.
Hmm.
I really do want to like sit on this more. I need to think about this for myself because I feel like it matters. Because just a lot of time you're just wrestling with that. I want to grow, and I'm afraid of failure. I'm a failure to. I'm a fail. I'm afraid of succeeding. You're afraid of like different things that are part of the journey that you have to like cross that boundary of that your own little electric fence, regardless of what it is, if you want to get beyond
Hmm.
it. So um
I think we fantasize with the idea, right? Like, to get rid of fear. Like that sounds like a great concept on the surface. That,
yeah.
oh, like the fear of all this discomfort and worries that I have and everything like that. That sounds like there's going to be just less pain
Yeah.
in my life. But inherently with that, there may be less positive things, less joy as well at the same time.
Yeah, and I guess like we also see a lot of that in movies where, they like glorify superheroes or even like the bad guy I'm sorry, not the bad guy, but like the badass guy that can, you know, like John Wick just came to mind, which I think is a terrible movie by the way, but there's zero
They
story and
made three of them. They
it's
made
a
three.
very, very weak plot, but anyhow. Travis is a huge fan. So no, I think that we glorify this idea of being so fearless, of being able to like overcome anyone and anything. And I think you're right that it does give us the sense of being alive at the same time.
Mhm.
And I want to think about that more.
So we're getting close to the top of the hour here. Would you mind if I read that blog that I talked about?
I don't mind, and
I think
also
it
I'm attempting to come back on video, and if
okay.
you need to close us out, that's what's gonna happen.
I think it would fit this blog here fits very nicely with the last couple of things that we've discussed.
Cool.
Um, just pull it up here.
I also wanted to acknowledge that I really liked Melanie's question about children. And
Yeah, that is a good question.
Melanie, we'll have to talk to you about that.
Okay, so this is written by Garrett Kramer. He's a founder of Inner Sports. He seems I looked up his website a little bit, and he appears to be like a life coach for geared towards like the sports world. So this is called A World of Fear. Imagine a world in which no one sought cures for or tried to fix the sensation of fear. Yourself a minute. Do you see a world at war or a world at peace? Do you see a world of disease or a world of health? You've been taught that fear must be managed or willed away. Every expert under the sun claims to have the method that leads to bravado, positivity, to a tranquil mind. But let's turn to experience. Have methods proved effective, or do you employ them, find momentary relief, fear once again, then repeat this vicious cycle? Why then do we keep seeking that which will end our fear? Could it be that it doesn't exist? The smartest minds in the universe, philosophers, clerics, doctors, inventors, neuroscientists, have done their best to solve the riddle of fear. Tons of ideas have been proposed, tons of protection mechanisms designed, sold, and tried out. If fear could be cured or even managed with any consistency, wouldn't we have figured it out by now? And even more critical, could it be that suggestion that fear must be fixed and attempts to fix it are contributing to the disharmony of our culture? Could it be that seeking materialistic causes and cures for fear leads to more confusion, blame, and our widespread habit of lashing out? What if to solve the riddle of fear, we must consider the opposite approach? What if to live without fear, we must first be willing to live with fear? Again, nothing else is doing the trick. The next time fear arises, think again about running, hiding, arming, medicating, or looking for the cause and the cure. See what living with fear actually brings. In the absence of seeking and resistance, perhaps you and the world will find peace.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. I feel. Can you post a link to that by the way?
Post the link to it.
Yeah. Can you share
Yeah, I
that?
can. It was an
Yeah,
email.
I was. Oh, it was.
Yeah, I
Send
might
us
be
all
able
your
to find
emails. Um, that's kind of what I was feeling like as you're reading. I was thinking that it's acceptance is key. Acceptance is leaning in. Acceptance is not resisting it,
it. Mm-hmm.
and that creates so much less struggle and energy against it. It creates the possibility of being with it in a new way, in a way that's actually productive, that allows you to grow and move forward?
Yeah, I think it captured a lot of what we talked about, of how,
Mm-hmm.
the big questions, does it serve a purpose? Should we welcome it, or should we live without it?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was really interesting. When I asked in the beginning, what would the world look like without fear?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a world of war or a world of peace? And that one's really
Mm-hmm.
interesting, right?
Mm-hmm. I know, and you
So
just opened up a whole new box that like, as we do ending every episode, we could take this in a lot of different directions, and I think you've left us with some really great questions and concepts to ponder.
yeah, it's I don't know. The last thing that I'll say is like that gave me a really peaceful, helped me find a peaceful relationship just for a moment with fear.
Mm-hmm.
That we don't have to look at fear as this big scary thing. We don't have to be fearful of fear.
Mm.
That it's something that we can have a better relationship with.
Yeah. Yep. I feel that too. Don't fight it.
So awesome.
Okay.
What are we doing next week?
Next week we're talking about ghosts. If you were here at the beginning of the
Yeah.
episode, one of my favorite weird topics. And next week we're going to be back with a panel. So we're going to be talking about the afterlife too. Does the afterlife exist?
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? And some ghost stories, because I'm excited to hear about those. You have some for
Yeah,
us?
we're gonna hear the ghost stories.
I know. Do you have some?
I've never seen a ghost.
You're not living. Okay, Michelle, our
I'm
former
not.
our former panel guest, Michelle, who was also with us today on this call. She has a trillion. She has like enough for you, just so you know. Okay, but
Really?
regardless, we'll end it there. So we will be back here on Thursday, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, talking about ghosts, ghost stories, the afterlife. I was like, it's the end. It's not. It's our last Creepy October podcast, but it's not. I love October. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being with us tonight. We will be back soon. Good night.